In Cuba, the situation at the supertanker depot in Matanzas province, west of the island, is complex. After several explosions, local authorities assure that the tank number 3 has not exploded. In Colombia, Gustavo Petro and Petro and Marquez has just been sworn in this Sunday as the new president and the vice president of the country, respectively. And 32 people, 6 of them children, have been killed in Israel's bombardment of Gaza since Friday. Several Arab governments condemned Tel Aviv's violation of international conventions. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada, and these are the news. In Cuba, the situation created at the supertanker depot west of the island is complex. After several explosions, the governor of Matanzas assures that tank number 3 has not exploded. In the early hours of morning, strong explosions were heard after a change in the wind direction complicated the extinguishing efforts. Several explosions were heard and other columns of fire and smoke turned the sky red, sounding the alarms facing a possible affectation of the third tank. However, the governor of Matanzas, Mario Felipe Sabines, clarified a few hours ago that the explosion occurred in the second tank and a fuel spill was generated. He reiterated that the situation is still complex and that the third tank is still at risk, but the fire and specialist brigades continue to work in the field. Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel Bermúdez also praised Cuban people for their solidarity and joining the fight to extinguish the fire at the Matanzas supertanker depot.
Also overcome that adversity. I believe we are overcoming it in the way we are facing it, and as I keep saying, we will always be ready to go for more. We will never stop in adversity. We will never let ourselves be defeated by a complex situation, and for that reason I believe we have a people that is the one demanded that we go ahead, that people that is supporting us with a tremendous solidarity.
President Díaz-Canel ratified his commitment with the Cuban people and pointed out that they are working to solve the situation as soon as possible.
We are evacuating the fuel from other tanks to avoid losing that fuel, as long as we can also extinguish that fire. The temperature around the place is very high. All the conditions are in place to go and look for the victims we have not been able to reach. We also know that it's a situation of uncertainty, even for the families affected, but we cannot risk people with the high temperature levels we have in the area, but we will be working on that.
Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador called on Sunday for intensified efforts to save 10 workers trapped in a flooded coal mine in the northern state of Coahuila. Authorities said the miners had been carried out excavation work when they hit an adjoining area full of water. Relatives of the missing were becoming increasingly desperate 4 days after the mine flooded, fearing the time is running out to bring them out alive. 400 soldiers and other personnel, including 6 military scuba divers, have joined the rescue efforts, but so far it has been too dangerous to enter the mine. 5 workers managed to escape from the crudely constructed mine in the initial aftermath of the disaster, but since then no survivors have been found. And on Sunday, Gustavo Petro and Petro and Marquez sworn in as Colombia's new president and vice president, respectively. The new president and vice president had their inaugural ceremony in the company of the Colombian people, who celebrated the occasion with several cultural events that took place in the surroundings of the Bolivar Square in Bogotá. The event was attended by at least 100,000 people and a delegation of international dignitaries, including the president of Honduras, Xiomara Castro, and Argentina, Alberto Fernández, and of Bolivia, Luis Arce. Both Petro and Marquez swore an oath to protect the nation and to strive for the dignity of the Colombian people.
Colombians have been many times in our history sent to the condemn of the impossible, to the lack of opportunities, to absolute no's. I want to tell you all, Colombians that are listening to me in this Bolivar Square, in the surrounding areas, and in all Colombia. And outside that, today, our second opportunity begins. We have earned it. You have earned it. Your effort is and will be worth it. It's the time for change, and our future is not written. We are the owners of the paper, and we can write it together in peace and union.
We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back to From the South. Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro has called for coup-like actions, mobilizing his supporters for military action on September 7th, less than 4 weeks before the first round of the presidential elections. This Saturday, the president, who is running for re-election with minimal chances, according to the polls, has summoned his followers to celebrate Independence Day in Rio de Janeiro. In 2021, he had already called to disobey the sentences of the Federal Supreme Court. This time, he summoned all his followers to join the military at the Copacabana promenade and call on everyone to fight the last battle for life in the streets on September 7th.
I call on all of you now for everyone to take the streets for the last time on September the 7th.
In Argentina, the social and political organizations that make up the Union of Workers of the Popular Economy mobilized on Sunday in a new edition of the March of San Cayetano. According to the trade union spokesperson, the march started from the sanctuary in the port neighborhood of Liniers to the intersection of Avenues Mayo and 9 de Julio in Buenos Aires. Similarly, the social leader of the trade union, Esteban Castro, said that this year will be added to their slogans of peace for Argentina due to the current crisis in the country, in addition to the participation of other important political and social sectors of the nation. The San Cayetano March began to take place in 2016 during the government of Mauricio Macri with the aim of claiming for land, roof and work for the Argentine people. President Pedro Castillo has warned the opposition that he will summon the people to fight against the coup. The head of the state gave an ultimatum to the opposition and left to the TeleSUR for dialogue. From the province of Junín, he reminded the parliamentarians who have tried to remove him several times that they won thousands of votes, but he obtained millions to be in the presidency. He also assured that as Simón Bolívar fought against the royalists, today Peru is fighting against the coup forces in the country. He addressed precisely that people with more fervor, urging them to defend democracy.
I urge the Peruvian people that if they continue on this journey after having endured more than a year in the framework of respect for democracy, I will feel forced to make a national crusade together with the Peruvian people to defend democracy, to defend the Peruvian people, because I come from the democratic ballot box where the people have come from, to restore schools, hospitals, and to defend the Peruvian people, things that we've been fighting for many years.
President Pedro Castillo also referred to the refusal of Congress to prevent him from attending the inauguration of Colombia's president, one of his strategic neighbors, and questioned the false morals of those who voted in favor of banning his trip to Bogotá.
We have to talk about diplomacy when they take away this constitutional right from us. What morals do those who sent arms to the Colombian armed forces have to talk about diplomacy? What morals and diplomacy do those who loaded drugs in the presidential airplane have to talk about diplomacy?
Now we move on to other topics. In Turkey, the Ministry of Defense confirms the arrival of the second caravan of ships carrying grain from Ukraine to the shores of Istanbul. The Panamanian vessel was followed by the Maltese-flagged Rojan and the Turkish Polarnet, all coming from the port of Chornomorsk and bound for the United Kingdom and Turkey. The Ministry of Defense confirms that the Joint Committee of Specialists will inspect the cargoes of the last two vessels in the next few hours to certify their integrity. According to the Turkish agency TRT, Ukraine still has 20 million tons of grain in silos awaiting shipment. And we have more news coming up after a final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. Israeli bombardment of the Gaza Strip since Friday has already killed 32 people, 6 of them children, and injured more than 253. Several Arab governments have denounced Tel Aviv's violation of international conventions. The Palestinian Health Ministry confirmed the death of 2 youngsters in the Jabalia refugee camp north of Gaza. Meanwhile, civil defense forces involved in the rescue operation at the bombed buildings reported at least 8 deaths in the city of Rafah. In retaliation, Palestinian militias fired rockets to areas of Jerusalem and other locations in Israel. Occupying forces confirmed at least 580 rockets fired from the enclave. Salam al-Maruf from the Gaza Government Information Office confirmed that 650 homes were destroyed during the onslaught. Al-Quds brigades also certified the death of their leader in the northern region, TeleSUR al-Jabari, and the Secretary General of the formation, Ziad al-Nakala, announced the beginnings of hostilities against Israel. Several Israeli legislators have called on their government to cease hostilities against Gaza, claiming that such acts are politically motivated in times of elections. And the Palestinian Islamic Resistance Movement, Hamas, has condemned the silence of the international community in the face of Israeli attacks in the Gaza Strip. Hamas spokesperson Fawzi Baroun called on the silence in response to the crimes committed by Israel and the international community's inability to take action, a disgrace for the whole world. According to Baroun, the events of the last few days in the Gaza Strip show the aggression of Israel against the people of Palestine and called for urgent measures to be taken in this regard. The statement of the Hamas spokesperson comes in the midst of a new onslaught by Israel with the so-called Dawn operation, which according to the Tel Aviv is carried out to curb terrorism in the region. In Lebanon, Islamic Resistance Movement Hezbollah Secretary General Syed Hassan Nasrallah said that they will not remain silent in the face of Israel's attacks on the Gaza Strip. During an evening address, the Hassan Nasrallah made clear his rejection of the blood and violence perpetrated against the enclave since last Friday. Nasrallah also rejected the assassination of the commander of the Al-Quds brigades, TeleSUR al-Jabari. Likewise, he emphatically said that this Lebanese and the Palestinian resistance will defeat the Israeli army. The African Union has expressed its strong condemnation of the continuous Israeli attacks on the Gaza Strip. African Union President Moussa Faki Mahamat reiterates that the attacks against civilians and the illegal occupation of territories constitute a clear violation of international law and hinder the process to find a lasting and just solution. Faki Mahamat said that in his capacity as President of the African Union, he is pledging the unwavering support of all its member countries for the Palestinian people in their legitimate quest for an independent and sovereign state with East Jerusalem as this capital. The African Union further calls for urgent international efforts to unite and to bring about a solution with guarantees for the lives of the Palestinians. And Tripoli, the capital of Libya, remains in relative calm after clashes broke out on Friday between militias vying for power in the country. The clashes occurred when Usama Juwali group, which backs Fazi Bouchaga as prime minister, tried to seize the camp of the National Mobile Force, loyal to the Government of National Unity, the GNU, in Tripoli, led by the Prime Minister Abdul Hamid Dibeibe. But the camp's defense troops managed to hold out until reinforcements arrived on the scene. This is the current situation in what was once one of the most stable nations in the Mediterranean Africa, until the U.S.-led intervention overthrew and assassinated the former president Muammar al-Gaddafi. And the U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken arrived in South Africa on Sunday, kicking off a three-nation African tour to counter Russian diplomatic influence in the region. Blinken is expected to meet with his South African counterpart Naledi Pandor on Monday and then announce the U.S. strategy on the African continent. After his visit to South Africa, Blinken will head to the Democratic Republic of the Congo, ending his tour in Rwanda. This is the Secretary of State's second trip to Africa since his appointment. On his first tour, he visited Kenya, Nigeria, and Senegal. U.S. policy in Africa has focused in recent years in competition with China, mainly due to China's investments in the region. However, following the conflict in Ukraine, the United States seeks to limit Russia's influence in the region. In Tunisia, the Coast Guard has intercepted 255 migrants in the Mediterranean Sea trying to reach Italy. According to the National Guard, 170 of the migrants and asylum seekers are from sub-Saharan Africa and the rest are Tunisians. This adds to the 455 migrants intercepted by the Tunisian Coast Guard in several operations off its coast on July 18, 2022. During the spring and the summer, the number of attempted crossings across the Mediterranean usually increases, and Italy is one of the main gateways for Europe to Europe for migrants from North America who take boats from Tunisia or Libya. According to Italian Interior Ministry figures, between January 1st and July 22nd, 2022, 34,000 irregular migrants arrived in Italy by sea, compared to 25,500 in the same period in 2021 and 10,900 in 2020. TeleSUR English continues to grow. Its signal now reaches Europe. You can order it from your cable dealer or tune it yourself. These parameters that you see on the screen are in place since July 1st. Quite soon, further changes will be implemented for the signals in the Middle East and Africa. Now, more than ever, the world connects to us, and our stories are heard in other farther away nations. This news multi-platform will continue providing truthful content to oppose the hegemonic media's narrative and our faithfulness to our audience. So we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.